Hey there, scientists. I'm Mr. Steier, and this is Mr. Steier's Classroom. Today, you are going to identify some of the conditions that make it difficult to grow enough food for all the people on Earth. And you're going to be able to describe hydroponics and explain how its use can help increase the supply of food for humans. Let's go. Scientists, today's topic is a very serious and a very heavy topic. So I need you to be thinking critically when we go through this information so that you can get the most out of it. What we are talking about today is we are talking about growing crops, and we're talking specifically about how in the future, those crops that we've been growing, we will have enough food to feed all of the people on Earth. So our big driving question today is how can people grow crops where there is not enough land with good soil? And how can people grow enough food to feed all of the people of the future? So knowing those are our questions, let's get into it and talk about what we're looking at. So first things, we're asking ourselves, what would happen to plants if they did not have adequate soil? Now, we know from our last lessons that inside of the soil, that is where plants find the nutrients that they need that are absorbed with the water through the roots of the plant in order for the plant to have the materials to grow. So, what would happen if plants did not have the nutrients they needed in the soil? Well, we can look here and we can see some situations where there are plants that are not getting the nutrients they need from the soil. Whether that is because there is a drought or the nutrients of the plant are being used up by insects, or there is a flood and there's too much water and so there's not enough nutrients available. And in all of these situations, we're seeing that plants are not able to get what they need in order to survive, thrive, and grow. In low-lying areas, frequent floods are going to cause problems for the plants. Insects and other pests may devour crops, leaving little food for humans. Raccoons damage this sweet corn. Or in this situation, some crops are damaged when rain does not fall regularly. The severe lack of rain is called a drought. We know that these are realities. We know that these are challenges that farmers and all the humans on Earth face when it comes to food and producing crops. What we're looking at today is how would a shortage of land with good soil affect the amount of crops that could be grown? Now I know what you're asking. You're asking, well, why is crop growth important? Well, today, there are about 7 billion people in the world. By 2050, that number is expected to increase to more than 9 billion. All those people will need much more food. As the population grows, more and more land will be used for cities, roads, and homes. So where is that food going to be grown? These are big questions. These are heavy questions when we talk about our future, when we talk about your future, where in the year 2050, you are basically my age now. So what are things going to be like in the future? How are we going to be able to solve these problems now so that they're not problems in the future? Well, I know that you are thinking of ideas of ways that we could have enough nutrients in the soil and we could have enough land to grow the plants on. And those are all great ideas. Every one of those is a reasonable idea. Okay, we can't fly everyone in a spaceship to Mars and live there, because even there, we need to be able to grow plants on Mars in order to be able to have the food we need to survive. So that was an interesting idea. There's definitely something to that, but there's more we can do here on Earth now. One of those solutions that we can talk about is hydroponics. So hydroponics is where plants are grown in water instead of soil. Now, we know from our last lesson that plants do not have to have soil to grow, but they have to have nutrients. So, how are the nutrients going to get into the water? Well, we add them. The nutrients plants would normally get from water and soil are added to the water in which the plants grow. Because these systems are often set up in greenhouses, fresh local food is made available year-round. So when we look at the situation where there's a drought and there would not be enough water, or if we're saying, how are plants going to be grown in an Arctic or a cold environment? The answer is greenhouses. So these vegetables are being grown at the South Pole. The hydroponic grow room produces enough vegetables to produce 50 people at least one salad a week. So this concept of hydroponics allows scientists and farmers to be able to create a system that could produce more food with less impact. So here, this scientist, this plant scientist, plants in the hydroponic systems are often grown in racks. So they take up little space. So the plants are actually being able to be grown on top of each other in racks and not spread out over a giant field. And you might think that hydroponic systems would use more water than traditional methods of farming, but hydroponics can actually save water since the plants do not have to be irrigated. That makes hydroponics very useful in arid or dry regions. Plants still get sunlight and the air they need. In parts of Africa, scientists have found that crops grown with hydroponics use only 1/3 of the water used by a traditional farm. So knowing all of this, what we are trying to figure out is, could a hydroponic system allow farmers and scientists on Earth to be prepared for the increase of 2 billion people over the next 30 years? And not only that, but we can take that idea of hydroponics and we can actually take that further. And we could ask ourselves, what kinds of plants could be grown in space? And what might be the problems associated with growing plants in space? In addition to providing food, how might plants help astronauts stay alive? So could hydroponics be a system we used if we actually did get everybody on one giant spaceship to Mars? So your job today is twofold. Remember, your job is to identify some of the conditions that make it difficult to grow enough food for all the people on Earth. And we know that those conditions have to do with drought, those conditions have to do with pests, and those conditions have to do with the changing weather patterns and climate change. We also worked for you to be able to describe hydroponics and explain how its use can help increase the supply for food for humans. And we discussed here today that hydroponics would allow farmers and scientists to grow more food in a smaller area and to be able to be protected from the weather environments around them. And again, we took a step and we're trying to think further and say, hey, how could this process be used if it were applied in space? So, your job today is to make certain that you understand what is happening with our world food supply and how we're preparing for an increase of 2 billion people by the year of 2050, and to be able to understand hydroponics and to determine if that could be a viable solution to this larger problem. Thanks for being here today with me, scientists. I am Mr. Steier. This is Mr. Steier's classroom, and I just want to give a quick shout out to all of the students and all of the staff at Centennial Elementary. I miss you guys. I hope everything is going well, and thanks for the shirt. Bye, scientists.